everyone. Today I want to talk about being complicit in white supremacist systems. If you have spent any time awake today, this week, this year, the past 5 years, the past 10 years, 50 years, you'll probably know why I'm making this video. We have a racism problem in America, a huge one, and every single time some major incident happens, you want to ask yourself, how can I do anything? What can I do about this? How can I mitigate this? How can I prevent this? How can I help? And this is a journey that I have been going on. Many of us have been going on for a long time. We want to know what we need to do. A lot of us are making really serious efforts to invest in equity in our workplaces. And we're educating ourselves, we're going to trainings, we're reading. We are doing some transformational work within ourselves, and that is essential. It's necessary. It is so important that all of us, no matter what our background is, racially, economic-wise, anything, we all must, but especially those of us who have privilege, we all must work to combat this horrific system that has taken generations upon generations to build, and that has billions and trillions of dollars invested in it continuing to go on. If you are upset that you as an individual have not yet solved racism, understand that racism is a concept that has existed for a long, long time. And the racist system in America, sort of like American white supremacy, has been built up over all these years. And there are so many things that a post-racial society challenges in America. Our office hierarchy, office politics, the concept of productivity, like all of this shit that we and in this country feel is very important and has an element of racism in it that is insidious and unseen by a lot of people. One of the things that I realized kind of recently over the last 3 years is that very frequently when we see within a company, specifically, when we see within a company racism happening, when we see people of color not being promoted, when we see people of color getting disciplined for attitude, things like that, when we see people of color doing the vast majority of the emotional or physical labor around an office, even when that's not really their job, that is very, very frequently tied to a breakdown of systems. You have unclear policies. You have managers who don't know the difference between preference and policy. You have unclear workflows. You have unclear employee evaluations. You have a hiring system that's flawed somehow. All of that is very concrete and not necessarily racist. The person who didn't write down the policy isn't thinking, ha ha ha, I will be super racist and write down this policy wrong or not write it down at all. Not usually, no. In general, the person is writing a policy based on whatever they know or what the resources they have at the time are. And what happens is that privilege is privilege. People with privilege are sort of buffered. They get the benefit of the doubt. They don't have to show as much evidence when they're saying, oh yeah, that campaign was successful. A lot of people will just believe them. Whereas with people who are darker complected, when you ask people about their experience at work, frequently they have to provide a lot more evidence for people to believe them. Frequently they have to do a lot more sort of like performative things to convince other people that they're good at their jobs. That's all racism. That's all just this sort of like the air we breathe, the culture we live in. And that is why broken systems at work, that is why sort of like a laissez-faire attitude towards what we as a culture do and how we do it is actually contributing to workplace racism, because you are not being specific. And when you are not specific in American culture, what happens is that dominant culture, which is straight, white, able-bodied, that culture takes over. And if you have someone who isn't from that culture or who has been rejected by that culture historically, they are not going to get the same perks. They are not going to be able to show up 5 minutes late and someone think, oh, they're probably doing something really important. There's all of this internalized personal bias that we must address when we're talking about racism and continuing to do that work to address our internalized bias. Also at work, when we have sloppy systems, when we have sloppy data management, when we just sort of have that sort of 5 smart men in a room will figure out anything theory, which is deeply flawed for many reasons. When we try to think that that's the case, what we are doing is we are putting people with any kind of marginalization under a lot of pressure to figure out the systems for themselves or to follow along with unwritten rules that they'll never actually be able to follow along with because they're not white. When we say, oh, it's casual, that's not casual. That's just Caucasian. We have to get over the idea that we're being a monster by having super specific workflows or super specific systems. No, we're giving people the exact amount of detail that they need to get their job done well and to be evaluated well and to get promotions, to get raises, to get educational development that they need. All of these things that historically people with marginalization are getting less of in our workplaces. So that is what I have to say about that today. I hope that you will think about how sloppy system keeping affects people of color, women, disabled people in your office. It universally does. So thank you. And that's something you can do. That's something you can do today to deal with racism. It hurts. There's shit going on out there. You feel it in your heart. You can't believe that this is happening. I mean, I can, because I am a Mexican, but also a lot of people really don't understand how this happens, and this is how this happens. Sloppy systems lead to casual, sort of cultural racism creeping in, and then the racism is more powerful than the system that it inhabits because the system was never strong enough to get it out or deal with it, make it leave, etc. So that's what I have to talk about. See y'all tomorrow.